Hello? May I have your attention, please? Oh, isn't that nice? Good afternoon. Okay, I will start again, or we're not going to have this. Good afternoon. My name is Faisal Abdullah, and I hold the Chazen Distinguished Chair in Art, and I'm also the Associate Dean for the Arts here at UW-Madison School of Education. I thought I was DJing. We extend a warm welcome to all of our guests near and far. For you all here in person today, and to the dozens of families and friends and colleagues who are joining us through a live stream of this event. I have to give my wave to the camera, but welcome. It's wonderful to celebrate more than 120 EDS, MFA, OTD, and PhD graduates from the School of Education and their achievements. As an Associate Dean at the school, I see firsthand the contributions and brilliance of our students, including those of you in this room. We are here to celebrate and congratulate you. Today is your day. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the Dean of the School of Education, Diana Hess. Dean Hess is the Karen A. Falk Distinguished Chair of Education and a member of the National Academy of Education. In her nearly 9 years in this role, she has built upon the foundation of this excellent school of education with broad support across the arts, health, and education. She has launched new and innovative programs for faculty, staff, and students, including the largest scholarship program the school has undertaken, the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Education, Wisconsin Teacher Pledge. Now, this is my favorite part. Join me in welcoming our Dean, Diana Hess.
Thank you so much, Faisal. And let me begin by saying welcome to all of you. It's great to see you. In particular, I want to begin by welcoming the faculty and staff, all of the family and friends, but most of all, the graduates. It's your day, and we're here to honor you, and we're going to do it in many different ways. But first, I'd like all of the graduates to stand up, and let's give them a warm round of applause and welcome. So I know there are many of you who are here trying to figure out why it is we have a school of education that has so many different parts to it. So I thought, because I used to be a history teacher, I would start with a little history lesson. The School of Education here at UW-Madison is unusually large. It's one of the largest schools of education in the world. We've got over 1,000 faculty and staff and literally thousands and thousands of students. It's a diverse school of education in that we have departments in the arts, and we have departments in health, and we have departments in education. One of our professors, Matthew Berlin, who's a professor in curriculum and instruction, summed it up this way. He said, look, what does it take to have a good life? And his answer was, well, you need health, and you have to have the arts, and you have to have education. So we proudly call ourselves the UW-Madison School of the Good Life. In addition to being unusually diverse, quite literally, there's no other school of education in the world that has this particular compilation of departments. We also are very proud of our excellence. And this year, for the first time in my 9 years of being dean, I get to proudly say that you are graduating from the #1 school of education in the United States. Now, what makes this school of education so unusually strong? And I have 3 answers. The first is we have an amazing faculty. We have over 170 members of the faculty, and the faculty are extraordinary as teachers, as researchers, as creators, as mentors, as thinkers. We have great staff who work across the entire School of Ed to make sure that all of the things that need to run well, run well. But I think what is really our secret sauce is we attract incredible students. And you know that because you know that you are incredible, and you know that your peers, your student colleagues that you've been working with for so many years, who will be your lifelong friends, are just extraordinary. Today is about you. We want to honor you, we want to thank you, we want to congratulate you. But first, I want you, the students, to join me in thanking the faculty and staff. And so the faculty and staff, if you are able, could you please stand and let's the rest of us thank them for their incredibly hard and impactful work. The students who are graduating today are earning degrees that are incredibly difficult to achieve. There are very few people who earn these degrees. They take an amazing amount of work, and in order for it to work, people going through these processes need a lot of support. And they have had you, family and friends, who have done so much for so many years to support these graduates. And I would like the graduates to join me in standing to thank all of the family and friends who did so much to make sure that you could walk across this stage today. Please join me in thanking the family and friends. And because it's your day, I want to make sure that all of you are able to walk across the stage. And as you can see, we have a huge group today. And so we want to make sure that every single one of you gets the individual recognition that you have earned. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you to our MC for the event, who is the Senior Associate Dean of the School of Education and the Vilist Achievement Professor of Educational Policy Studies and History at UW Wisconsin-Madison, Adam Nelson. I want to say a few words about Adam Nelson. Adam is an extraordinary leader. He has done so much to make sure that all of the programs that you are graduating from today get the support they need. During my time as dean, these last several years, Adam has been working so hard and so carefully to make sure that all of the new programs that we're developing are programs that are smart and that work. He's done a great job. Please join me in thanking and welcoming my friend, my colleague, our leader, Professor Adam Nelson.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be here as part of this celebration and to guide us through it. We have a lot to cover this afternoon in order to honor our many excellent graduates who are going to be receiving 4 different degrees: the Education Specialist degree, the Master of Fine Arts degree, the Occupational Therapy Doctorate degree, and the Doctor of Philosophy, PhD. So we have many graduates with us, and in order to move things along relatively smoothly, I'm going to ask people to generally hold your applause until the end of each group. There will be lots and lots of groups, so we can applaud often. And stick with us until the entire program has concluded. We'll have plenty of time for people to get over to the Cole Center when we're done. So as Dean Hess mentioned, we're going to start with our graduates who are receiving the Education Specialist degree. These are professional degrees that build specific expertise in education fields through research and practice. So I'm going to ask our Education Specialist degree recipients to come and line up here on this side of the room, up in the front of the room. And as you do so, I'm going to explain how our process will work. So when each of you checked in at the registration table, you were given, I guess we're all gathered on one side of the room. Birds of a feather. So when you checked in, you got a card with your name and your department as well as a number. So when you line up, please pay attention to the number. And everybody's all ready. I was about to say, make sure you have your cap and your hood on. Well done. As you're assembled, Jody Moen will collect the card before you come across the stage. And as you come across, Dean Hess will congratulate you. I'll have a chance to introduce you and say a little bit about your work here. And our photographer, Sarah, will take your photograph. And then you can return as we cheer on your group at the end. So, let's begin. First is Ashley Airy, who is graduating as a first-generation college student. And she will be continuing her work as a school psychologist at Poynette Elementary School. Kristen Dyson. Our next graduate is Kristen Dyson. Kristen participated actively in assessment research during her EDS studies, after which she's going to be continuing her work in the Madison Metropolitan School District as a school psychologist. Next is Jonathan Paul Hardinger. John was a scholar in the Project LEADS training grant that's aimed at building leaders of school-based teams. He's accepted a position at Horizon High School in Thornton, Colorado for the upcoming school year. Next is Peyton Claire Kettle. Peyton currently works at Woodbury Elementary School in Woodbury, Minnesota. Her interests integrate trauma-informed practice and multi-tiered systems of support. At UW-Madison, She received a Response to Intervention Training Grant from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education. And through this grant, she received specialized training in working with problem-solving teams involved with responses to intervention. Congratulations. Next is Olivia Mons. Graduating as a first-generation college student, Olivia is currently completing an internship at a high school in Colorado. She's excited to be staying at the same school this fall for her first year in the field. Katie Nosbush, after completing undergraduate degrees at UW-Madison in elementary education and education studies, has now completed her EDS and is wrapping up her internship year in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Next year, she'll be working at one of her current elementary schools as a full-time school psychologist supporting students with a variety of needs. Next is Mason Poitameni. As a Project Leads Grants recipient, Mason is working to advance school-based mental health services while collaborating and working closely within school teams. Mason continues to be an advocate for strengthening social emotional learning programs and supporting students academically. Next year, she'll be a school psychologist in an elementary school in Mount Prospect, Illinois. Raina Sowers. Her next step is to practice as a school psychologist in a public school in Minnesota. Lots of our graduates heading off to Minnesota. Lucky schools there. And finally, Rhea Sorensen. Rhea completed her internship in Colorado at an elementary and high school in Cherry Creek School District. She's excited to have accepted a position at an elementary school in that district for next year. She's grateful to all of the friends and mentors she has met during her time in Madison. Please join me in congratulating our EDS degree recipients. So this concludes the recognition of the education specialist graduates. And now we're going to move into the hooding portion of our program. And I want to share a bit more about what we're doing and the tradition that is before us. So the tradition of conferring the academic hood, this little number on the back, has its roots in the medieval university and symbolizes membership in the community of scholars. It's reserved for those who attain the highest degree in their fields beyond the bachelor's degree. And the hood denotes advanced scholarly and professional achievement. It became part of the code of academic dress established by American colleges and universities at the end of the 19th century. And the code that gave meaning to the colors in the hood is as follows. The hood's lining, this stuff, identifies the university that granted the highest degree by the holder. And here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the hood's lining is cardinal red. The trim on the outside signifies the academic discipline broadly in which the degree was received. So you'll see that Masters of Fine Arts degree recipients have a trim that is brown. Those who are receiving the Doctor of Occupational Therapy have a trim that is sage-colored. And those who are receiving the Doctor of Philosophy have trim that is colored blue. So we're going to start the hooding program by first recognizing recipients of the Masters of Fine Arts degree, and we're going to follow with those who are receiving the Doctorate of Occupational Therapy. So graduates of those degrees, I see you're already way ahead of the curve. Along with your advisors, if you're receiving an MFA or an OTD, please come up to this side of the room. And as we move through, I'll explain how this little part is going to work. You're wearing your cap and gown, holding your hood in your hands, and make sure it is unbuttoned. If it's buttoned, we might end up in some kind of very awkward, almost choking-like situation on the stage, which we're going to avoid. So, with your degree group, first MFA and then OTD recipients, within those groups, line up in the order of the number on your card. Once you've assembled, my colleague will collect your card, and as I read your name and to say a little bit about your work, Dean Hess will offer congratulations, our photographer will take your photo, and then you and your advisor can return to your seat, unless your advisor will be helping another graduate. I can see that these are recipients of advanced degrees because they are doing this extremely well. Their logistical skills are outstanding. Okay, so to start with our recipients of the Masters of Fine Arts from the Art Department. Our first graduate is ex Medionoche. Drawing from the experience of their viscous relationship to technology and spirituality, X's thesis exhibition focused on the organ, as well as color, light, spatial sound design, and multi-channel audio installations as tools for presence. They're looking forward to continuing working in sound design, installation, and other time-based media. X's hood is bestowed today by Professor Julie Chen. Our next graduate from the MFA program is Devin Stakanis. Devin's MFA thesis work in printmaking is rooted in ancestral labor history, resource extraction, and inhabitation of the Pennsylvania coal region. She is a 2024 Graduate Creative Arts Award recipient and has been selected for a Fulbright Student Research Award to Poland for the 24-25 academic year. Devin's hood is bestowed by the chair of her graduate committee, Professor Fred Stonehouse. Please join me in congratulating the recipients of the MFA degree. Now we're going to move on to recognize recipients of the Doctorate in Occupational Therapy. First, Anna Avery. Anna's capstone project focused on designing accessible wellness programming for college students with disabilities. Anna hopes to continue working with this population, bringing occupational therapy into this higher education setting. She's currently applying for jobs in the Mountain West, and her hood is bestowed by her advisors and mentors, Associate Professor Elizabeth Larton and Clinical Assistant Professor Alexia Revny. Kelly Berry. Kelly's doctoral capstone focused on improving occupational therapists' ability to use the cognitive orientation to daily occupational performance approach. And she worked at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago. She plans to continue her work as a pediatric occupational therapist, and her hood is bestowed by her advisors, Clinical Assistant Professor Caitlin Robinson and Associate Professor Brittany Travers. Next is Jennifer Cuppely. Jennifer's capstone focused on making research findings more accessible to the community and centered on identifying policy implications in research findings. She hopes to continue her relationship with Carla Austerau's lab at UW-Madison as a community partner while returning to her role as Vice President of Continuum Therapy in Madison and becoming that organization's newest clinician. Her hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Carla Austerau. Oh, and others. Thank you. Our next graduate is Xiating Chen. Xiating has dedicated her career to pediatrics, embodying a profound commitment to the well-being of our youngest generations. She hopes to continue advancing the understanding of pediatric care and integration of mental health support. Her hood is bestowed by her program director, clinical professor Sharon Gartland. Next is Elizabeth Dennis. During her capstone project, Elizabeth created a caregiver education program designed to support nature-connected families. Elizabeth accepted a job as a pediatric mental health occupational therapist at Denver Children's Home in Colorado. She's excited to continue supporting the connection between wellness and nature. Her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor and mentor, Associate Professor Brittany Travers. Next is Weston Dixon. Weston's studies, including his clinical rotations, involved orthopedics and pediatrics. Ultimately, Weston plans on opening his own private practice to support pediatric and orthopedic clients, or work as a school-based therapist. Weston's hood is bestowed by Assistant Professor Beth Fields. Ryan Donnelly. Ryan's capstone centered on the intricacies of academic occupational therapy, from theory formation, course design, and research practices, to the many skills required to be a proficient educator in the field of occupational therapy. Ryan plans to build upon this work with the goal of one day helping the next generation of OTs. But first, he's excited to start his clinical career in North Carolina, with plans to support the healthcare of veterans. Ryan's academic hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Brittany Travers and Clinical Assistant Professor Caitlin Robinson. Anna England. For her capstone, Anna collaborated with a local outpatient mental health clinic to plan a community event aimed at increasing awareness of and access to mental health services. This event was also designed to dismantle stigma associated with mental illness. After graduation, Anna will prepare for her board exam before pursuing opportunities within travel occupational therapy. Her hood is bestowed by Assistant Professor Beth Fields. Brooke Fallonsby. Brooke completed her capstone with Chrysalis Clubhouse in Madison and worked with individuals who have mental health and substance use challenges to build skills so that they're successful in their communities. She focused her capstone on accessibility, organization, and accommodating the needs of these individuals. Her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Elizabeth Larson. Mackenzie Fitzpatrick. Mackenzie's doctoral capstone was completed at Our Generations, an outpatient mental health clinic in Monona, Wisconsin. Mackenzie infused an occupation-based lens within the assessment process at Our Generations, and also focused on improving the patient experience at the clinic. She's staying in the Madison area following graduation, where she will begin her career as an occupational therapist. Her hood is bestowed by Assistant Professor Beth Fields. Paige Graysons. Paige's capstone was completed in affiliation with St. Louis University and the Transformative Justice Initiative. She created a pre-release re-entry program for people incarcerated who have cognitive disabilities. She plans to continue to pave a path for occupational therapy within the carceral system. Paige's academic hood is conferred by Assistant Professor Kristen Pickett and Clinical Assistant Professor Sarah Jarosky. Selena Huerta. Selena's capstone project focused on promoting research accessibility to Spanish-speaking families. Selena has also contributed to an article published in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders. Her hood is bestowed by her advisors, Associate Professor Brittany Travers and Clinical Assistant Professor Caitlin Robinson. Marie, my mistake. Marie's capstone focused on developing and piloting a parent education class for parents of infants in the neonatal intensive care unit at a hospital here in Madison. The class aimed to empower parents to support their infants' development and advocate for their needs, both in the NICU and beyond. Marie aims to pursue a career in pediatrics. Her hood is bestowed by her advisors, Clinical Assistant Professor Dan Rortvedt and Associate Professor Carla Osterow. Kelsey Johnson. Kelsey partnered with Special Olympics Wisconsin for her capstone project, and during this time she educated future healthcare professionals around the state about inclusive healthcare for individuals with intellectual disabilities. She's currently seeking jobs in the inpatient rehabilitation setting. Her academic hood is conferred by Assistant Professor Beth Fields and Clinical Assistant Professor Sarah Poltrock. Tori Johnstone. Tori's capstone project involved curating an occupational therapy telehealth toolkit. This toolkit educated healthcare communities on the latest telehealth basics and documented foundational practices. She looks to obtain a position working with veterans to give back to the community her husband has been a part of. Tori's academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Elizabeth Larson. Sabrina Kabakoff. Sabrina's work has focused on developing her research interests as she'll be pursuing a PhD at UW-Madison. Her occupational therapy doctorate helped her develop skills as an academic professional by completing 2 student grants, writing research manuscripts, mentoring OTD students, and honing her research skills. Her hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Carla Austro. Kyra Joan Neuser. Kira, thank you for the correction. It's even written right here for me that way. Kira's doctoral capstone focused on expanding occupational therapy services for cancer patients going through chemotherapy at University of Wisconsin Health. She's currently interviewing for OT jobs in Philadelphia and hopes to find work in an inpatient rehabilitation setting. Kira is grateful to have her hood bestowed by her advisors, Clinical Assistant Professor Sarah Jarowski and Assistant Professor Kristen Pickett. Next is Cameron Naskawek, oh my goodness, this one I'm really ruining. Naskowiak, how is that? Naskowiak. Gotta have emphasis on these, very sorry about that. Cameron's capstone was completed with ClinEdWeb to assess occupational therapy student learning and provide feedback for improvement of the video-based platform. Cameron will be moving back to North Central Wisconsin to work as an occupational therapist, and her hood is bestowed by Clinical Professor Sharon Gartland and Professor Dorothy by Sharon Gartland. Next is Ryan Ping. Graduating as a first-generation college student, Ryan's capstone involved the creation of a more holistic assessment process for the Adapted Fitness Program here at UW-Madison. He hopes to work in pediatrics as an occupational therapy practitioner, and his hood is conferred by Clinical Professor Sharon Gartland. Aubriana Poole. Aubrey's capstone was focused on developing a local community event to increase awareness around mental health, available mental health resources, and occupational therapy's role in addressing mental health, with an emphasis on sensory processing. Aubrey is staying in the Madison area to begin their career with hopes to work in a mental health setting. Aubrey's hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Carla Austro. Yadi Quintanilla. Yadi's capstone focused on the implementation of inclusive strategies within syllabi design to promote students' sense of belonging in higher education. Yadi's hopes to be in occupational therapy in an acute setting before becoming a professor. Yadi's hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Elizabeth Larson. Jessica Schmidt. Jessica's capstone focused on conducting qualitative research on perceptions of people with Parkinson's disease who engage in community-based exercise programs. She's currently interviewing for OT positions in hospital settings here in Madison, and her academic hood is conferred by Assistant Professor Kristen Pickett and Clinical Assistant Professor Sarah Zarowski. Katie Schmidt. Working with the ARC Wisconsin nonprofit, Katie's capstone explored occupational therapy's role in larger policy systems, including advocating for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities on Capitol Hill in Washington. Katie plans to enter the mental health field and continue working in advocacy, and her academic hood is bestowed by her mentor, Associate Professor Brittany Travers. Jessica Marie Scott. Jessica's capstone was a partnership with MARC, an organization here in Dane County that provides job support and day services to adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Her capstone included creating a website for MARC that provides occupational therapy resources and education for MARC staff. She hopes to work as a pediatric occupational therapist after graduation, and her hood is conferred by Clinical Professor Sharon Gartland. Ashton Spritka. Ashton's capstone examined outpatient care, especially the ways in which collaborators can help to create opportunities for meaningful accessibility to resources that support children with disabilities. She hopes to work in the Madison area as a pediatric occupational therapist in either a school-based or outpatient setting. Ashton's hood is bestowed by her advisor, clinical assistant professor, Sarah Zarowski. Oh, and Kristen Pickett. Catherine Still. Catherine's capstone involved creating and piloting a Parkinson's wellness program at Attic Angel Senior Living Community. Upon graduation, Catherine will be working as an inpatient psychiatric OT at Meriter Hospital here in Madison. She also hopes to continue supporting the well-being of older adults in her future career, and her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Beth Fields. Lan Vo. Lan's capstone focused on creating a holistic approach to cancer care with the development of clinical practice guidelines for cancer-related fatigue. She hopes to continue to expand occupational therapy's role in healthcare and advocate for the profession. Her hood is bestowed by her faculty mentor, Associate Professor Carla Austerow, and Clinical Assistant Professor Daniel Rortvedt. Claire Weibel. Claire's capstone focused on piloting a nature connection program at a local elementary school to promote healthy development and well-being for students in need of additional support. She's accepted a school-based OT position near Madison. Her hood is bestowed by her advisors, Associate Professor Elizabeth Larson and Clinical Assistant Professor Alexia Rebney. And last but not least, Alana Woolley. Alana's capstone on knowledge translation in the field of occupational therapy aims to increase practitioner confidence in applying evidence-based practices and engaging in shared decision-making. Alana hopes to practice as a pediatric therapist in family and community settings while continuing to contribute to professional continuing education initiatives. Her hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Carla Austerow and Clinical Assistant Professor Dan Rortvedt. And we have stored up our applause, and now let's let it out. So this concludes the conferral of hoods for doctorates in occupational therapy. And now we're going to start transitioning to our PhD recipients. And we're going to be starting with recipients from the departments of counseling psychology and then curriculum and instruction. So if you're receiving your PhD from the Department of Counseling Psychology or Curriculum and Instruction, please assemble here in the front on this side of the room. And as we wait, I have a little activity for us. I want to see if we can identify the table with the youngest future Badger PhD. Now, which of the tables might have someone who, at some point in the future, you just don't know, might earn a PhD from UW-Madison? So, oh, we've got some young ones. Oh, definitely some young ones here. Uh-huh. Oh, there's a young one. Okay. I didn't even know that we'd get to hold up the youngest future PhDs. I thought we might start like age 15, work our way down to 12 and then 10, but no, oh, this is a possible future PhD right here. Very enthusiastic. Very enthusiastic. Okay, so while we're at this, I'm kind of wondering if we can identify the table with the oldest Badger of any degree in the room. So I'm wondering if we have any Badgers, you can just raise your hands here, over the age of 60. Oh, we've got a Badger here over the age of 60. Oh, we've got a Badger there over the age of 60. And a couple here over the age of 60. This is pretty impressive. Are we ready? I don't know. I think we're ready to start our PhD graduates. All right. So we're going to start with recipients of the doctorate in philosophy from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, starting with Sergio Dominguez Jr. Sergio's dissertation is about the ways multiple marginalized trans people's stories of gender euphoria can create racialized, gendered pleasure for all people. Sergio is currently completing their doctoral internship at the University of Illinois, Chicago, where they've accepted a postdoc staff psychologist position. Sergio's hood is conferred by their mentor, Associate Professor Stephanie Budge. Rachel Dyer. Rachel has accepted a position as a tenure-track assistant professor of psychology at Lawrence University, here in Wisconsin in Appleton, and will be joining a small group practice as a therapist. After graduating, she's looking forward to spending more time with her husband, their cat, and family and friends. Her hood is conferred by her advisor, Associate Professor Stephanie Budge. Next is Anthony William Pimentel Flynn. Anthony's dissertation explored the construct validity of performance-based therapist skills assessments. After graduation, he seeks to continue putting his core principles of solidarity and fierce compassion into practice across clinical, teaching, research, and advocacy roles. Anthony's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Associate Professor Simon Goldberg. Pilar Gautier. Pilar is a first-generation college student, Phi Beta Kappa honoree, and the first counseling psychologist from her community. Her dissertation is grounded in an indigenous philosophy of ethics that focuses on the lived sociocultural experience of Native American women. Pilar is applying for fellowships to evaluate the effectiveness of an innovative indigenous-led wellness model in her community. Pilar's hood is bestowed by Professor Mindy Thompson. Hannah Glenn. Hannah's dissertation explores the way in which undergraduate college students learn about mental health on social media and use mental health content for self-directed mental health support. She's accepted a postdoc fellowship at University Health Services here at UW-Madison, where she'll focus on training and supervision and working with students of color. Hannah's academic hood is conferred today by Professor Steve Quintana. So this concludes the recipients of the PhD from the Department of Counseling Psychology. So as we continue with PhD recipients from curriculum and instruction, I'd like to ask PhD recipients from the Department of Ed Leadership and Policy Analysis to begin gathering on this side of the room, and they will be followed in turn by graduates from Education Policy Studies. So PhDs from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. First is Burju Alapala. Burju is the first person in her extended family to pursue a PhD. Her dissertation is about cultivating future teachers' awareness of children's mathematical thinking. She's stepping into a new role as an assistant teaching professor at the University of Missouri in the upcoming academic semester. She's passionate about the opportunity to guide the next generation of mathematics educators. Her academic hood is conferred today by Professor Hala Husseini. Next is Anshika Bashin. Thanks. Anshika's dissertation explores the racial and linguistic experiences of Indian American students within the U.S. educational system. She's currently finalizing her appointment as an associate researcher, and her hood is proudly bestowed by her advisors, Nicole Louie and Diego Roman. Next is Brad Beards. Brad's dissertation and broader research interests challenge how folks make sense of themselves and their worlds via education and knowledge construction. As a crypt educator, their works refuse the production of sense in a normative process of insidiously constructing othered positionalities to articulate determinative realities. Their works, therefore, eschew normative constructions of thought, being, and reality, attempting to enflesh more aberrant embodiments of nonsense and multiplicitousness via cryptness and irrationality. Moreover, their dissertation transgresses normative philosophical attenuations of temporal, spatial, and causative determinations of reality, and thereby enlivens more aberrantly temporal, aspatial, and non-causal crypt livabilities. Brad is hooded by one of their dissertation committee members, Professor Tom Popkowitz. Rosette Cirillo. The first in her family to attend college, Rosette's dissertation focuses on the relationship between classroom teachers and death, and illuminates new pedagogies born from teachers' intimacy and mortality. Next year, she will be joining the faculty of the Harvard Graduate School of Education's Teaching and Leadership program. Her hood is bestowed by one of her advisors, Professor Kate Vieira. Next is Daria Gok. Daria's dissertation examines the meaning-making of children aged 2 to 5 as they read and play with picture books related to social justice themes, such as identity and diversity, in a preschool and child care center. The study goal was to investigate the analysis of children's meaning-making of picture books to understand the social world around them from the children's perspective. Her hood is conferred by Professor Dawnine Hassett. Next is Sydney Jennings. Sid's dissertation showcases the opportunities mathematics teacher educators have to help students and aspiring teachers of math construct healthy self-associations with the subject. He's excited to continue his teaching and scholarship at Lone Star College, University Park in Houston, Texas. Sid's hood is conferred by his advisor, Associate Professor Maxine McKinney de Royston. Next is Noah Carvelis. Noah's dissertation studies the construction of difference and governance within music education. He's currently interviewing for professorships in curriculum and instruction, and his hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Tom Popkowitz. Next is Elise Krause. Elise's dissertation examines the emotional toll high school literacy teachers endure due to mandates placed on educators by state legislation. She's a secondary school educator who is passionate about faculty development. Her hood today is conferred by her advisor, Professor Dawnine Hassett. Pardon? Okay. Number 9. Ju Lim. Ju's dissertation explores the developmentally appropriate and equitable use of technology for young children through the experiences of pre-service teachers. This work aims to provide support for teachers to make informed decisions regarding technology use. And this fall, Ju will begin a tenure-track position as Assistant Professor of Creative and Innovative Education at Georgia State University. Ju's hood is bestowed by Professor Beth Grau. Next is Garasi Lopez de Aguilita Hausi. Garasi's dissertation explores the impact that dialogic literary gatherings can have on adolescents' views on personal attraction and how these things can lead to healthy, close relationships. After graduation, she will return to Spain and hopes to become a university professor to continue doing research on education and social impact. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Erica Halverson. Jeremy Schumpert. Jeremy's dissertation examined how high school teachers understand and enact LGBTQ+ allyship in social studies classrooms. He's currently teaching high school social studies and preparing his dissertation for journal publication. He's also planning his next research project with LGBTQ+ ally teachers and students. His academic hood is conferred today by Professor Lee Ching Ho. Jonathan Tunstall. Jonathan's dissertation challenges not only our conceptualizations of what social studies and civics education is, but how the arts can be used as tools for deepening our understanding of how qualitative research is conducted. Jonathan's academic hood is conferred today by Professor Erica Halverson. Yay. Lisa Velarde. Velarde. Thank you. Lisa's dissertation explores the digital literacy practices of youth engaging in transnational communication in Mexico, Uganda, and the United States. In the coming year, she will be the ESL, English as a Second Language, coordinator in UW-Madison's Master's Program in Curriculum and Instruction, Secondary Education, Teacher Preparation Program. She will also be working as an educational researcher with the Multilingual Research Center here at the Wisconsin Center for Education Research. Her hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor Emerita Maggie Hawkins. Stephanie Helena Williams. Stephanie's dissertation focuses on the importance of play and play-based learning in schools. After graduation, she will continue to teach science, technology, engineering, art, and math, STEAM, to 3K through 8th graders at Herb Cole Teaching, as a Herb Cole Teaching Fellow Award winner. In January, Stephanie will embark on the adventure of a lifetime, a Fulbright to Australia. Stephanie's hood is conferred by Professor Dawnine Hassett. Yuxiang Zhu. Yuxiang's dissertation concerns exploring ways to foster critical cosmopolitanism for language teachers around the world. He's accepted an assistant professor position in elementary and literacy education at Minnesota State University in Mankato. Yuxiang's academic hood is conferred today by Professor Emerita Maggie Hawkins. This concludes the recipients of the PhD from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. Now we will move along with graduates who are receiving the PhD from the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. Woo. Next. First among them is Valerie Crispin Trujillo. Valerie's dissertation uses a case study approach to examine how transfer student coordinators at public institutions of higher education in Wisconsin experience and implement state and system-level transfer policies. Valerie currently works as a program officer at Ascendium Education Philanthropy, where she engages in national grant making. Valerie's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Shuili Wang. Next is Paris Duan Echoes. Paris's dissertation focused on understanding how Black community-based youth sports leaders and coaches impact historically marginalized communities through sports. Through his Born Gifted consulting firm, Paris hopes to continue supporting and empowering all youth, families, and communities to find the self-awareness, holistic health, and healing they need to create sustainable impact and change. Paris is hooded by Professor Angela Welton. Next is Sarah Elizabeth Harbo. Sarah's dissertation focused on assisting K-12 schools as they navigate and comply with the complex and, at times, competing regulatory structures of Title IX and special education law. Sarah currently serves as Vice President of Equal Opportunity, Accessibility, and Title IX at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. She's hooded and bestowed by her advisor, Professor Suzanne Eckes. Stephanie Gabriella Giuradini. Thank you. Stephanie's dissertation is a comparative mixed method study about the development of teacher leadership through professional learning opportunities. Stephanie is currently an administrator in a school in her home country of Lebanon. Stephanie's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Carolyn Kelly. Jill Gertner. Jill is the principal at Clark Street Community School in Middleton, Wisconsin. Her dissertation on high schools as empowering environments allowed her to raise up the perspectives of youth and support practitioners seeking to redesign high schools as liberatory environments. Jill's hood is conferred by Professor Rich Halverson. Jianxi Li. Jianxi's dissertation centered on institutional discourses, practices, and policies around diversity, equality, and inclusion, and their impacts on the practices of the Office of International Student Services here at UW-Madison. She hopes to become a faculty member after graduation and is hooded today by her advisor, Clinical Professor Weijia Li. Mario. Mario Morris. Mario's dissertation examined whether student athletes are employees from a legal perspective. Mario is the Senior Vice President of Administration and Chief Financial Officer of the NCAA. His hood is bestowed by Professor Suzanne Eckes. Vanessa Pena. Oh, sorry. Who are we? Oh, sorry, my apologies. Aisha Okor. Aisha's dissertation explored the relationship between community college access and local economic conditions during and before the COVID-19 pandemic. Following graduation, Aisha will join the UW-Madison Extension School as a research and evaluation specialist. She looks forward to continuing her contributions to the Wisconsin idea in her new role, and her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Shuili Wang. Now, Vanessa Pena. Graduating as a first-generation college student, now with a PhD, Vanessa's dissertation focused on mother's influence in Latina college going, shedding light on crucial but often overlooked aspects of educational pathways. Vanessa will be transitioning into a postdoc position at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Rochelle Winkle-Wagner. Joel Richard Pollack. Joel's dissertation is a critical ethnographic case study focused on partnerships between community, school, and district leaders that seek to center racial equity and educational justice, with particular attention on efforts to co-create policy and practice on behalf of schools labeled low-performing. His academic hood is conferred today by his advisor, Clinical Professor Tina Saltzman. Khadija Ray. Khadija's dissertation examined how Black doctoral students were socialized into academic and professional norms within the discipline of sociology. She plans to use her research to address racial inequities within graduate and professional education and training. Khadija's hood is conferred today by Professor Rochelle Winkle-Wagner. I know, sometimes it just bubbles up and it has to burst forth. I get it. Joseph Romero Reyes. Joseph's dissertation focused on showcasing the strengths and valuable contributions of first-generation and low-income men of color in community colleges. His work highlights how initiatives supporting men of color empower them to navigate the transfer process from a 2-year institution to a 4-year institution successfully. Joseph's hood is conferred today by Professor Shuili Wang. Narek Sahakyan. Narek's dissertation examines how the recent pandemic has affected English learners' education. Using an intersectionality lens, his study sheds light on increasing disparities in academic outcomes. His academic hood is bestowed by Professor Angele Welton. Oh, sorry. Yes, back to me. Chris Saldana, too. Can't see people. Nicole. Yes. Nicole Sillier. Nicole is a proud member of the Bad River Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. Her dissertation centers on Indigenous students and explores the experience that Indigenous communities have with community colleges. Nicole is currently Director of College Access and Experience Programs at Madison College, and her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor and mentor, Professor Shuili Wang. Kim Stieber-White. Kim's dissertation explored the factors that English teachers prioritize when selecting literature for racially diverse adolescents labeled struggling readers. This work also looks at the characteristics of the books such readers often select. Kim's hood is conferred today by her advisor, Assistant Professor Kevin Lawrence Henry. Blaine D. Stone, Jr. Blaine's research explores the college-going process of Black students who were formerly in foster care. Specifically, his dissertation examines how and why these students chose to attend a specific institution and pursue a specific academic major. Blaine's academic hood is conferred today by his advisor, Associate Professor Brian Burt. Josh Wallace. Josh's dissertation explores Black men's agency in graduating from engineering programs and draws from the work of Black masculinities and Black feminist scholars on this subject. In the fall, Josh will begin his journey as a tenure-track assistant professor of college student personnel at the University of Louisville. Josh's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Brian Burt. Caitlin Westaby. Kate is graduating as a teen mom and first-generation college student. Her dissertation examined the enormous inequities in college access for young parents. She engaged with young parents to co-research these inequities and sustained this work by developing the Young Parent Collective, a network that advocates for change. Kate is a researcher at the Urban Institute, a policy research organization based in Washington, D.C. Her hood is conferred by Associate Professor Brian Burt. Maria Widmer. Maria's dissertation used a hermeneutic phenomenological approach to studying the experiences and learning outcomes of undergraduate labor activists who work in collaboration to unionize their on-campus jobs. Maria's academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Shuli Wang. Pei Wensheng. Pei Wen's dissertation examined international student holistic well-being in community colleges and these students' momentum in achieving educational goals. She hopes to land a faculty position and start a new journey in her home country of China. Pei Wen's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Shuli Wang. Please join me in congratulating all the recipients of the PhD from the Department of Education. Hang on. Okay. Yep. Next, we'll be moving on to recipients of the PhD from the Department of Educational Policy Studies. So if those students could gather up here. Oh, yes, and I'm supposed to notify you that the next group will be recipients of the PhD from the Department of Educational Psychology. So if that group could already start gathering on the far side of the room, that would be great. I feel like I've been asking you to hold your applause just altogether too much. Do we need to let out just one less extra little group here? I feel like I need that. So we're halfway through the PhDs. Okay, from the department. Okay, we're going to take 1 second. PhD graduates from the Department of Educational Policy Studies. First, Kelsey Aurora Dalrymple. Kelsey's dissertation explored the use of social and emotional learning with Burundian refugees in Tanzania. She will be joining the Department of Educational Policy Studies next year as a teaching faculty member. And she will also continue working with a variety of humanitarian organizations to improve and inform humanitarian services. Kelsey's hood is conferred today by her advisor, Professor Diana Rodriguez Gomez. Next, I have the special honor of awarding a hood to one of my own students. So I'll read and then step us over for just a moment. Ned Frame. Ned's dissertation is a biography of the liberal philosopher Scott Buchanan. Using Buchanan's life story as a backdrop, his work reinterprets the history of liberalism as an intellectual, educational, and political ideal for the first half of the 20th century. Ned's hood is conferred today by me. Tyler Hook. Tyler is graduating as a first-generation college student, and he wrote a dissertation that explores the corporatization and financialization of schooling in Liberia, and how communities are resisting these processes through the creation of community-based schools. Tyler's academic hood is conferred today by Professor Erica Turner. Jacques-Pierre Lesueur. Jacques' dissertation is an ethnographic study of the politics and pedagogies that influence leadership and career education for high-achieving collegiate black men within a nonprofit setting. His methods included interviews and participant observations, and he's an incoming visiting assistant professor of education at Brown University. Jacques' hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Erica Turner. Emily Olson Miller. Emily's work as an elementary school teacher motivated her to pursue a PhD in educational policy studies. Her dissertation examined how different education stakeholders engage with issues of race and equity in a predominantly white, small-town school district. Next year, Emily will be a member of the teaching faculty of the Department of Educational Policy Studies, and her hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor Lynn Posey-Maddox. Allie Shepard. Allie's doctoral dissertation looks at solidarity in community-based language education in a hostile immigration policy environment for people seeking sanctuary in England. Allie's hood is conferred today by Professor Diana Rodriguez-Gomez. This concludes the recipients of the PhD from the Department of Educational Policy Studies. And now we'll move on to PhD recipients from the Department of Educational Psychology. First is Man Chen. Man Chen's dissertation is about adjusting for selective reporting bias in meta-analysis with multiple dependent effect sizes. Man will join the faculty of the Education Psychology Department as an assistant professor at the University of Texas in Austin, starting in the fall. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor James Pustajowski. Next, Brianna Collins. Brianna's dissertation centers on the disciplinary experiences and perspectives of black girls in schools. She's currently completing her 5th year as a psychology intern at a community mental health agency in Columbus, Ohio. She hopes to work as a psychologist in Madison after completing her postdoc internship. Her hood is bestowed by her co-advisor, Associate Professor Andy Garbitz, and Katie Eklund. Elizabeth Davis. Elizabeth's dissertation focused on the efficacy and acceptability of a universal pre-K social-emotional program delivered by pre-K teachers. She's currently completing her internship as a school psychologist in a school district in North Carolina, where she plans to complete a postdoc next year as a full-time school psychologist. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Katie Eklund. Next is Courtney Dubose. Courtney's dissertation focused on implementing a small group intervention via telehealth for children and adolescents showing symptoms of anxiety and depression. She's currently completing her pre-doctoral internship at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and will continue her clinical training there as a postdoc next year. Her hood is conferred by Associate Professor Katie Eklund. Next is Ting Ting Fan. Ting Ting's research examined media impacts on adolescents and emerging adults' development. Her dissertation explored the impact of media use on the psychosocial well-being of adolescents with social withdrawal in China. After graduating, Ting Ting will work as a postdoc research associate in the Department of Pediatrics here at UW-Madison. Her hood is conferred by Professor Amy Belmar. Next, Caleb Eisenflack. Caleb's dissertation examined child mental health outcomes of a parenting skills intervention. He's interested in teaching and research in the field of school psychology And beginning in 2024, fall 2024, he'll be an assistant professor in the school psychology program at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. Caleb's hood is bestowed by Associate Professor Andy Garbitz. Eliza Godfrey. Eliza's dissertation investigated a youth mental health literacy professional development training for educators. Eliza is completing her psychology internship at the Monroe Meyer Institute in Omaha, Nebraska, my hometown. She's excited to return to Wisconsin this fall for a postdoc fellowship at the Medical College of Wisconsin's Child Development Center, and her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Andy Garbitz. Julia Hilbert. Julia's dissertation investigated the adaptation of a school engagement and dropout intervention to be more trauma-informed. Julia is completing her psychology internship at Connections Day School, a therapeutic day school, and she's excited to return to her home state of Michigan for a postdoc fellowship in a private practice. Julia's hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Steve Kilgus. Pauline Ho. Graduating as a first-generation college student and with English as her fourth language, Pauline's dissertation examined the professional identity development of nursing students. She's received multiple research grants and awards, including recognition for mentoring 20 undergraduates in research. And she'll be serving as a visiting assistant professor in the psychology department at Reed College in Oregon. Pauline's hood was conferred by Professor Amy Belmer. Hannah Kim. Hannah's dissertation investigated the use of causal inference methods to evaluate education programs and identify varying outcomes across subpopulations. After graduating, she'll begin her role as an assistant professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Ji-Sung Kim. Jessica Kim. Graduating as a first-generation college student, Jessica attributes this accomplishment to her family's support and sacrifice. Jessica's dissertation focused on effective reading interventions for middle and high school emergent bilingual students. She hopes to build her career as a school-based practitioner, and her hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor David Klingbeil. Melina Knabe. Melina studies the cognitive processes that support children's language learning. Her dissertation examined the use of bilingual storybooks for promoting vocabulary learning in single and dual language learners. She'll be working as a postdoc professor or postdoc researcher in the psychology department at the University of Texas in Austin. Her hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor Haley Vlock. Nala Mandra. Nala's research centers on post-divorce forgiveness therapy. Her intervention was specifically designed for divorced Muslim women and was successfully implemented in Saudi Arabia. With the support of her husband, Nabil, and her kids, Layla and Omar, Nala is dedicated to continuing her work in forgiveness studies to create a peaceful world for her kids and their generation. Her academic hood is conferred today by Professor Rob Enright. Rui Meng. Rui's dissertation investigates how middle school students learn to interpret data presented by 2x2 tables, and how different types of instructional interventions can support their learning. She's currently applying for postdoc positions, and her academic hood is bestowed today by her advisor, Professor Martha Alibali. Abby Rosenkrantz. Abby's dissertation examines the relationship between school-wide systems of prevention and intervention and their effects on student outcomes. She currently works as a school psychologist at Dodgeville Elementary School and plans to continue her work as a practitioner, either in schools or other clinical areas. Her hood was conferred by her advisor, Associate Professor Katie Eklund. Xiangyong Tan. Xiangyong's dissertation examines how psychosocial outcomes are influenced by perceptions when partners use their phones during interactions. After graduation, Xiangyong will join the psychology department at Western Kentucky University as an assistant professor. She'll dedicate herself to research and her students' success. Her academic hood is conferred today by Professor Bob Enright. Tegan Twombly. Tegan's dissertation evaluated a local school community partnerships universal trauma screening process with the hope of better serving students across Wisconsin who are impacted by trauma. Following graduation, Tegan is excited to be starting a clinical postdoc fellowship at the San Diego Center for Children. Her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Katie Eklund. Chi Jung. Chi's dissertation examines the effects of parenting behaviors and forgiveness, a moral virtue, on the mental health of emerging adults. After graduation, she hopes to pursue a career as a university professor in her home country of China, where she plans to continue her research in the areas of parenting and mental health development. Her academic hood is conferred by her advisor, Professor Bob Enright. This concludes our graduates with the PhD from the Department of Educational Psychology. Pardon? Yep. So we're going to continue with PhD graduates from the Department of Kinesiology, and then the Department of Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education. So if PhD recipients from kinesiology and then rehabilitation psychology and special education could join us in the front of the room over here with your advisors, that would be absolutely terrific. So while they do it, we're going to play another very quick game. Who traveled the farthest? Okay, so if you're from beyond a state contiguous to Wisconsin, raise your hand. Okay, that's a lot of people coming from beyond states contiguous to Wisconsin. If you're from a state beyond a state that is outside the ring of states contiguous to Wisconsin, keep your hand up. Okay, now we're going to take the big leap. If you are from a place outside the borders of the continental United States, keep your hand up. That's still a lot of people who came a long ways today. And if you came from a place that is from outside the United States and beyond, as in all of the United States, and beyond a country contiguous to the United States, meaning Mexico and Canada, keep your hand up. Oh my goodness gracious, this is still a lot of people. I don't even know where I would go next. So thank you all for all the trouble you took to come here to this graduation ceremony. Kinesiology. So we have a graduate with the PhD from the Department of Kinesiology who is Heather Katz. Heather's dissertation is an exploratory mixed method study examining the perceptions of young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities who engage with instructors around inclusive group exercise participation. She hopes to continue her work in a postdoc position, and her advisor, or her hood is bestowed by her advisor, Assistant Professor Susan Andre. That was our graduate from the Department of Kinesiology. And last but not least, recipients of the PhD from the Department of Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education, starting with Katie Borofsky. Are we starting with Katie Borofsky? Great. Katie's dissertation focused on the development and the preliminary evaluation of a family-involved self-determination intervention. Since 2020, Katie has been working as an assistant professor in the Special Education Department at Winona State University. She's excited to have time to devote to her area of research, and her hood is conferred today by Professor Andrea Rupar. Which number? Right, thank you. Our next graduate is Megan Baumunk. Megan's dissertation explored a dyadic approach to disability adjustment processes for spouses. She hopes to develop interventions for rehabilitation counselors working with spouses and partners to facilitate positive adjustment experiences. She hopes to be an educator who can shape the development of rehabilitation counselors for generations to come. Her academic hood is bestowed today by Professor David Rosenthal. Next is Sarah Ann Bubash. Sarah's dissertation analyzed the comics that teacher candidates produced during art-based reflective activities. Within a teaching methods course, her goal was to better understand teacher candidate understanding of disability and teaching. She is currently interviewing for faculty positions in special education, and her academic hood is conferred today by Professor Andrea Rupar. Ray Dye. My fault. Ray's dissertation investigated how teachers' autonomy supportive teaching practices affected students' classroom engagement. Ray believes meaningful learning occurs only when students like what they do, and teachers play a vital role in this process. Ray's hood is bestowed by his advisor, Professor Kimber Wilkerson. Caitlin Matkin. Caitlin's dissertation is about reproductive equity experiences for individuals with disabilities. She's off to Texas in a few short weeks to begin her next position as a clinical assistant professor at the University of North Texas, and her academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Professor Susan Smiedema. Kate Roberts. Kate's dissertation focused on students' experience in alternative schools, and specifically sociocultural constructions of the legal requirements to place students with disabilities in the least restrictive educational environment. She's excited for what the future holds, knowing her heart lies with public K-12 education. Her academic hood is conferred today by her advisor, Professor Kimber Wilkerson. Ilan Radin-Young. Radin's dissertation is about how dual certification pre-service teachers develop their teaching identities during their field experience. She looked at the involvement of cooperating teachers and university supervisors in this process and plans to search for a special education faculty position in the Minneapolis area. Radin's academic hood is bestowed by her advisor, Associate Professor Andrea Rupar. So this concludes the recipients of the PhD from the Department of Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education. Thank you all, and congratulations again to all of our degree recipients.
Thank you so much, Adam. And before we adjourn to go to the Cole Center, I want to thank our remarkable event staff for putting together this event today. Please join me in thanking them. And I think we need to end with one more amazing standing ovation for all of our graduates. You rock. And we are adjourned.